Yep.
Right of share screen.
All right, so great. So here's our lifelong learning session. So let's begin, as we would in the manner of friends, with a shared silence. Great, thanks all. Just making this my... So I am doing double duty tonight and sort of letting people in also. So Mary Lynn, would you like to talk about our land acknowledgements and agreements, and then we can go back to the
Sure. So we want to recognize that the land we're on, wasn't ours to start. And so we have this land acknowledgement. We want to acknowledge that for those of us in the Philadelphia area, our homes, schools, and workspaces are on the ancestral lands of the Lenni Lenape people, and to lift up their history, legacy, and role in our country. We do this work so we can connect with our responsibility to make restitution. And because we believe that last sentence, and it's not just about naming, the Native Americans who lived here, but realizing what that means for those who are still here. We are including at the end here some websites for you to check out. What I'm doing in the way of responsibility is learning more. And so I'm reading as much as I can about the Lenni Lenape. So there's a website there from Community Conversations on Race, which talks about the place names in our Philadelphia area, about the dealings that the Lenape people have with the police. And there's a beautiful one about a woman who actually was taken to live with the Quakers and then became a musician and composer, but went back to using her ancestral music for her operas. So, okay, that's our land acknowledgement.
Great, thank you. So looking at our schedule tonight, let me move the chat here. Looking at the schedule tonight, we are doing something a little bit different. And if you have an opportunity, you can, in the chat, you can tell us where you're zooming in from, you can give us your name, and perhaps you recognize your land acknowledgement and would like to acknowledge that here in our chat. So tonight, we are being responsive to a question that came our way last week about how we approach poems. So tonight we're doing something different, and we will be looking at two poems by two poets, Anya Limon and Natalie Diaz. And Anya Limon and Natalie Diaz are friends. In 2017, they started a conversation between the two of them as they explored not only their own bodies in space, but their sense of dislocation, their sense of location, right? And they started communicating through poems in sort of letter poems. So in May 2020, Mary Lynn and I took up the same project, this time actually to find ourselves, right? It was the beginning of COVID. Mary Lynn was close to retiring. I was close to resigning from my job, right? We were in different places, but we were also quite dislocated from each other since we were at that point in COVID lockdown. So we will not only discuss Anya Limon's Cargo, the poem, but we will also introduce you to our poems that we wrote in response to Anya Limon and Natalie Diaz's poem. In addition to that, tonight we will also have a writing prompt and writing time and some sharing time. So let's get started. Move there. Mary Lynn, would you like to go over the agreements for this evening?
Sure. We often have community guidelines, and we thought these were the two most important for this night, for this event, to share the space and share the time, which just means, to make sure everybody gets a chance to speak, and then to lean into discomfort, which might mean for some speaking up where you are usually quiet, and for some for, standing back where you are usually vocal.
Great. So we will begin with the reading of Anya Limon's poem, Cargo. So I'm and remember this PowerPoint will come to you at the end of our presentation. So let's get there. And thanks everybody for putting your class and your relationship to AFS. This is so cool.
Yeah, it's great.
2013, my gosh, Desiree, I forgot what year you graduated. Wow. All right, sorry, I'm getting distracted here.
As you do.
So Mary Lynn, would you like to read Cargo? And then I will read Natalie Diaz's poem, Eastbound Soon.
Yes, okay. Cargo. I wish I could write to you from underwater, the warm bath covering my ears, one of which has 3 marks in the exact shape of a triangle, my own atmosphere's asterism. Last night, the fire engine sirens were so loud they drowned out even the constant bluster of the inbound freight trains. Did I tell you the R.J. Corman Railroad runs 500 feet from us? Before everything shifted and I aged into this body, my grandparents lived above San Mateo Canyon, where the Southern Pacific Railroad roared each scorching California summer day. I'd watch for the trains, howling as they came. Manuel is in Chicago today, and we both admitted that we're traveling with our passports now. Reports of ICE raids, and both our bloods are requiring new medication. I wish we could go back to the windy dock, drinking pink wine and talking smack. Now it's gray and pitchfork. The supermarket here is full of grass seed, like spring might actually come, but I don't know. And you? I heard from a friend that you're still working on saving words. All I've been working on is napping and maybe being kinder to others, to myself. Just this morning, I saw 7 cardinals, brash and bold as sin, in a leafless tree. I let them be for a long while before I shook the air and screwed it all up just by being alive too. Am I braver than those birds? Do you ever wonder what the trains carry? Aluminum ingots, plastic, brick, corn syrup, limestone, fury, alcohol, joy. All the world is moving. Even sand from one shore to another is being shuttled. I live my life half afraid and half shouting at the trains when they thunder by. This letter to you is both.
Natalie Diaz's response, titled Eastbound Soon. I am back in my desert after many years, the Mojave. This desert was once an ocean. Maybe this is why I am feeling myself drowning most places. Now it's the driest desert on our continent. Bone dry, we say, even though 1/3 of the weight of a living bone is water. We know nothing about ourselves. I have my passport with me these days too, like you and Manuel, not because of ICE raids, but because I know what it's like to want to leave my country. My country, to say it is half begging, half joke, and there is much. 2 nights ago, I watched bedside lamplight pour to the inside of my lover's elbow and fall long across the soft underside of her forearm, disappear into the dip of her palm like her hand drank the light, which surged again and brilliant over each of her fingers. A wave of moonlight riding the dusked rails of her arms. I was tied there to the moon, those tracks, fasteners, sleepers, and spikes bound in light, unbolted from my sadness, but the fast engine of joy. The Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad runs our desert. Its trains thrall in star-thick nights, splitting desert darkness and heat with their own. In Needles, California, Mojave women sold beads and pottery to white women at the El Garces Hotel, a Harvey house built for the train stop. And Houdini's wife died on our life too, on an eastbound train from LA to New York. Her body was removed at the Needles stop. I am eastbound myself soon for a reading at the Whitney for love or art, for the grime of New York and the grime I might make of my body in that splendid city.
So we hope you could hear that there was a back and forth there and some echoes from one poem to the next. But what we're going to do is just stick with one poem, and that's Cargo, since it's the one that started it all off. So Jenny, do you want to start talking about Cargo a little bit, and then I'll jump in, and then we'll ask everybody else to jump in. So make some notes if you want about what you notice about the poem.
Sure. So Anya Limon is one of my favorite poets, and I was immediately drawn to the title here, Cargo, and I kept thinking about what it is that we carry, right? So not only physically in our bodies, but also what we carry across country between us. So there are many things that we see here that get carried in the body and in the train. And if you look carefully, right, she even is talking about the idea of aging into her body. She says, and before everything shifted and I aged into this body, and she has this beautiful memory with her grandparents. And then even what we carry here could be a type of anxiety when she's talking about Manuel, whom I think is her brother, right? And so they both feel the need to be traveling with their passports in order to, right, to manage and what they're carrying in terms of anxiety of being identified and perhaps being deported. And then what else they carry, or what else the poet seems to carry, is also this idea of memory and this wanting to be back on the windy dock. And then, of course, we also see what the train cargo is carrying, not only the aluminum ingots, plastic brick, and corn syrup, but also fury and joy. And then another thing I love about this poem is the questions that she asks. They're so conversational and ask, you know, as we would in any type of letter, right? And you, she asks, and then did I tell you? Like, it's almost this moment where she's like talking to Natalie Diaz. And my favorite one, because, you know, some of you know this, right? Mary Lynn, my dear friend, right? Do you ever wonder what the trains carry? So Anya Limon asks the questions, and much like Mary Lynn, she answers it, right? Instead of actually, she answers the question herself instead of waiting for somebody else's answer.
Thanks.
But exactly like, right, you see the intimacy, not only in the questions in the poem itself, but then the intimacy of what she sees as the cargo of what is being carried. And then another thing that I notice in this poem is this, and Mary Lynn will talk a little bit more about this tension, right? I wish we could be together, right? Back at the beginning. I wish I could write to you from underwater, right? I wish that we were back on that windy dock, right? I wish all of these things. And alas, given the shifting landscape, not only of what they carry in their bodies, but also of the United States, which she seems to be responding to, alas, you know, the way they can communicate here is through the poem. Mary Lynn. Oh, and then of course the big question, sorry, I forgot this one big question at the end here, which gets its own line, which says, am I braver than those birds? And Mary Lynn, you can talk more about that bravery and what you see here in the poem.
Okay. So can you swing back to the beginning? There you go. Thanks.
Sure.
So I love the first line too. I wish I could write to you from underwater. It's so intimate. It's just so sweet a wish, you know, the way it opens. And I love the sounds of atmosphere's asterism. I don't know exactly how to picture the three holes in her ear as a triangle with that like little asterisks, but I love that sound. And then what I start to notice is how clearly she's invoking place. So first it's the fire engines so loud they drowned out even the bluster of the trains. Did I tell you the Corman Railroad runs 500 feet from us? So that's now. Then she shifts to place then, which is before everything shifted. My grandparents lived above Santa Mateo Canyon, where the railroad also roared through. And I love this last line because I think there's some ambiguity. I'd watch for the trains howling as they came. I'm not clear whether the trains are howling or she's howling as the trains come through. She lets out a scream. So there's this tension between the past and the present. And then she comes to, I wish we could go back to the windy dock, drinking wine, talking smack. And so that's memory. And the next stanza is the supermarket's full of seeds for the summer. Will there be summer? So then there's tension between memory, past, and future. So we had present and past, now we have past and future. So she's sort of moving time around and putting it next to each other. And then I love also that metaphor, now it's gray and pitchfork. Where we want to dock, just hanging out, drinking and, teasing and playing, being playful. Now it's gray and pitchfork. What a metaphor can hold, gray, ugly and damp, and pitchfork, that's not having fun together on a dock. Then there's more tension in the stanza about, I heard from a friend, you're still working. All I've been working on is napping. So the tension between that. And then the beautiful, beautiful detail of those 7 cardinals, the specificity of 7 cardinals, brash and bold as sin in a leafless tree. Again, great sounds, but also just to picture them there. And then she moves and they all fly. So there's also the tension between the stillness and the flight. And that question to me, am I braver than those birds, is just enormous because it brings in a tension between courage and fear. They're traveling with their passports because they're afraid. The pitchfork is something more threatening than hanging out together. And so I think there's a lot in that question about the birds of her own tension between fear and courage. And then the trains are passing by. So there's also movement and time happening there. And then the last stanza, all the world is moving, even sand is moving. And then we get the final juxtaposition, the final tension, which is, I live half my life afraid and half shouting at the trains. And so I think that was her howling, actually. When I come back to that stanza, I think, oh, it was her howling. And then that beautiful last line, this letter to you is both the howling, the shouting, and the fear. And so I think the letter becomes more than a letter at the end. It's this enormous love letter between friends. It's both confession, I'm afraid, I'm brave, I wonder if I'm brave. It's aspiration, I want to be, doing this better thing. It's sending both the fear and the courage to Natalie. So it's a synthesis of all the tensions, and it becomes, instead of either or, it becomes sort of both and I love that. So those are the things I see. Also the long lines. I'm not usually a long line poet. And so watching her do these long lines, sometimes long lines can feel really breathless. So many words coming at it. But because she's got punctuation, that it doesn't feel breathless at all. It feels like breathing. It actually feels like breathing in and breathing out, this poem, even though the lines are long. Okay. So that's our sense of the poem, just to throw some stuff out there. And now we wonder if you will jump in and tell us some things. Jenny, can you put those questions up?
Sure.
Did you want to say something else before that?
I was just, yes, no, I would love to, hold on, sorry. I think it's best if we keep the poem up, Mary Lynn. That's what I'm getting
Okay.
at. That was a
Okay.
hesitation. So
Yep.
if we could keep the poem up, and then, what jumped out at you? What were some of your favorite lines? Any reflections on what we've said or anything that you've noticed?
And it really can be that simple, like favorite line or a line that confuses me,
Yeah.
or afraid, or words I love the rubbing together. It doesn't have to be some, brilliant analysis. That's not what we're not really, we're trying not to do English class. We're just trying to do love poetry. Stop laughing, Des.
I loved the fire engine sounds over the freight trains, because that literally happened to me last night. I can hear the freight trains, and it's very restful. And for whatever reason, there were tons of sirens last night. And I woke up kind of, shaking. And also it reminds me of, because I'm a rail fan and trains are very peaceful, the emergency of the last few years interrupting my serenity.
Mm,
Hmm.
thanks. Yeah, we really do bring ourselves to a poem.
That, Rachel, that feels like the first line of your poem.
Mhm. Anybody else favorite lines, or even to, ask us questions about like what you saw that was different from what we saw.
I was intrigued by, I can't the full poem.
Oh, Susan, we're losing
Susan,
you.
you're kind of
Go back
jacked.
to the window.
Susan, you're jangly, and now
You know,
you froze. Oh, now there you
Okay.
are. Oh, go ahead.
There you
Now-
are. Go
There
ahead.
you are. Go ahead.
I'm unstable.
We know, but talk anyway.
So in the center there, the stanza, I wish we could go back to the wind dock, drinking pink wine and talking smack. That image is like, what is a wind dock? And the pink wine and talking smack, that's such a loose, happy vision compared to, then she follows it right up with the gray and the pitchfork. So I just thought that contrast was, and I just was intrigued with thinking about that image and trying to figure out what the wind dock was.
Well, I think it's supposed to be windy,
Mhm.
but I like the idea. I mean, it's the same idea, like I mean, you know what it's like to be on a dock when it's, when
Yeah.
that freedom there, drinking pink wine and talking smack. I mean, talking smack is just, the way we talk just talk to each other and yeah.
Yeah, I love that song.
Right,
You love
such a
that
fun-
song? What could you possibly love about that song? That kind of
That's right, yeah.
stuff. We would never do that.
Any other thought, anything else you noticed in this poem?
Yes, I wrote notes, so I'm gonna be looking at that. So first, I like just in general how she goes from specific to like generalized where you can relate. So what I wrote in my notes is like she focuses on what she sees versus what she's thinking and feeling, and I like that.
Mhm.
And then some standout lines for me was, before everything shifted and I aged into my body. I just found that as such a unique way of saying growing up. Like, that's just awesome. I really thought that was a unique sentence. And then another unique sentence I found was, oh yeah, towards the bottom where she says, I heard from a friend you were working on saving words. And I just wonder, was that her, or did the friend actually say saving words? Like, I just wonder, was that her unique way of saying it, or was that how she was told it? Because either way, that's just amazing. Working on saving words.
That is great. I love that one too. And I think Natalie Diaz is probably saving Native American words, right? Or finding them and, putting them back in the world. So yeah, I love that one too, Des.
Yeah. And then continuing with this relatability of versus napping and being kinder to others and self, like that's so relatable. And so I just like it's just interesting how it's not necessarily a contrast, it's just different perspective, the friend versus her. And so I really like that. And then so my question, and then I kind of explored it, was what did she mean by as sin in a leafless tree with the birds? Because, and then exploring it, I was like, maybe the sin is them fighting, like brashing at each other.
Mhm.
Yeah. Those were my thoughts.
Thank you. That's wonderful walk through the poem. All right, anybody else last chance? Although that's not the last chance because, you can have till, you can jump in at any time here. So,
That's true.
all right, well, Jenny, let's move to the next thing here.
Okay.
So,
Okay, so I'm gonna go back to our, so here is Anya Limon and her website and bio. And she has a new book out. Sorry, this is I feel like I'm always working for Anya Limon and Natalie Diaz. And Natalie Diaz recently won a MacArthur and the Pulitzer for her post-colonial love poem. And so you can find out more about both of these poets. So again, like I said, Mary Lynn and I took up the mantle. Here are the discussion questions. And we started to try to find each other in a dislocated time by writing poems to each other. And Mary Lynn and I have done this before. We've written poems to each other. We did a whole series of postcard poems to each other many years ago, but these felt particularly, we felt particularly more disconnected, and that anxiety of COVID was particularly acute. And one of the things that I learned in the process was exactly what you said, Desiree, was this idea that you are able to have large philosophical thoughts that are anchored in the specific, right? That you continue to come back to the specific place, as you said, Mary Lynn, and specific time. So I will read my poem because in our conversation that Mary Lynn and I had, I wrote the first poem. And so, good. Just go ahead, Mary Lynn. Did you want to say
Listen,
something
yeah,
else?
so right, so just to tell, because we're not going to put these up on the screen, so we just want you to take these in by ear. But what we want you to listen for is some of the, we didn't really spend a lot of time talking about how these two poets rub words together, but my goodness, do they? You know, they just, the way the words sound together. So listen for places where you can hear the words rubbing together in interesting ways. That we too were trying to be specific about time and place. And that we were also playing a little bit with the competing emotional states, fear and courage, anxiety and love. My gosh, at the beginning of COVID, it was, you know, terrifying and lonely and all that. And then we were also trying to have our letter poems be intimate and you know, conversational between us. So listen for those things. And then anything else you hear that echoes Anya Limon and Natalie Diaz's poems. Okay. All right, Jenny, go ahead.
So mine is titled Letter Poem. Even though you have not responded, I've begun to write to you. See you in your green, pink, and blue striped scarf, haloed by your collection of Virginia Woolf. What would she say about these times? How we've retreated to our rooms to hide there for shelter? I'm hearing you like I heard the wind howling the other day up through our single pane windows, around the wrought iron banister and tumbling up the steps. Yes, that wind, blustery, untethered, filling everyone's dreams with swirls of unhinged doors and posters. We live amongst trees, 100-year-old evergreens, peeling birch bark, diseased horse chestnuts, and in their slow, mindful regeneration. Just think, last year we worried about the spotted lanternfly, its black spots, beautiful red wings and yellow body, and how they crowded our trees. I remember being in the city once and amongst the walkers and crowds, a swarm huddled in the corner of a concrete building, fluttering and dying. Such beauty in disaster. But now our worry is deeper, and it seeps in, tightening around our lungs and hearts. But early this morning, when I could not sleep, I looked out my window to the trees, and there in the cool breath of darkness, just on the tip of moonlight, on the branches of the white serviceberry blossoms was you, singing into the dawn, your voice radiant, even in its mourning. These are, yeah.
So it's honestly hard to hear that again, but and also
Yeah, I would like to hear it again.
well, let me read mine and then maybe we'll see if we have time to do them again. But thanks for asking that, Lynn. Okay, so here's mine. I answer you singing. A song as full of silence as these petals of magnolias, white hands falling slant around me, where I spin in what sun also falls. I am reading a book called Happiness. There are coyotes howling in it, crossing bridges, eyes in the night. So many tulips leaves green ears flap over, but no blooms this year. Daffodils too, tall, pointed, green, faceless fingers. First of the family passes, masked. The father wears a yarmulke. They are walking in the street's splash of sunlight, laughing, and the sky fills all the spaces bluer. This is how it is now. Coyotes invisible and hungry in the streets, following families. Some days we think we can be safe, can be blue, can bloom. Little stones appear in the crooks of tree roots, 2 typed words on each: search, wisdom, voice, speak, be brave. Today I find 3 stones together. When blue, find fire, inspire. I want to pocket them all, leave them in a line to your door. On this stone porch of my own, with its sun that is you, in this stone house of my own, with its doors flung open for you, In this walls painted ochre room of my own, where I write this new day's light to you, the words, the stones pile. A drone someone sent over Philadelphia honed its hum over you as you drove streets eerily emptied, haunted. I imagined you like a bright dot on the map of an airplane's arc, tracing the Earth's curve. I dreamed of skateboarding down a long hill into darkness, toward your branches, I think, toward dawn.
Bravo again. Both of you.
Well, thanks. Could you folks hear like what we were playing with there? You could hear the, in mine, especially because there was also more of Jenny's in mine, you know, I answer you singing. For me, it's really hard to write long lines. So what we both, so there's this wonderful quote by Margaret Atwood, which anybody who's been in my classroom always saw up there, which is, I write to find out as I read to find out. And so as we write, we discover stuff about the poems, about ourselves. And what I was discovering was like how to keep going, like how to write a longer line. I'm usually more like Emily Dickinson, like little tight lines, you know, little short, small explosions. So that was an interesting learning for me. How about you, Jenny?
Yeah, I was really inspired by the idea of having an audience that I knew exactly who I could picture across town, even though we felt so dislocated or, you know, far away from each other. The idea of writing specifically to somebody I knew really changed the ways in which I could approach the material. And again, that specificity really helped, right? In terms of memory too, you know, and then all of those memories and, you know, and if we were to put them in hierarchy, right? In my poem last year, we were worrying about something else. And this year, now look, right? So, and that whole idea that time is constantly in flux and changing. Yeah. So,
and we didn't talk much in the other two poems, but what we noticed was the tension also between the natural world and the human world, which I think also came into both of our poems with the trees and the flowers and the skies, and then the drones and the, you know, the windows that were, you know, I can't even think of the word, shuddering in the wind.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And here just are some, you know, thinking about ways in which Mary Lynn and I approach poems. This is in which we go into poems, you know, sort of what we ask ourselves, what inspires us, what catches our attention, you know, where's a poet making an interesting move? What is the poem teaching me? What can I teach my readers? Who's my ideal reader? So these are just some of the questions that we think about as we're reading. That, you know, in addition to looking at the imagery and what the metaphor can hold, right? All of those things. So any last thoughts before we move into your writing? Awesome. So here are some prompts for you for tonight. Mary Lynn, you want to read them or
Sure.
Yeah.
So you could try writing a letter poem. So one of the things that Jenny said was, it's so wonderful to write a poem to somebody you really know, because you can put, you know, Manuel, we don't know who Manuel is. We don't know if that's her brother or her friend, you know, but they know. And so to write, and also I wish I could write you from a bathtub, you know, that's a very intimate friend thing to say. So you might write a letter like that to someone who you know so well. Or, you know, somebody else, somebody you don't know, but you think might, you know, it might be a good idea to hear from you. One thing that we often do is take a line or a phrase from a poem and use it as the start of a poem of our own. Just something that catches you and you just start there and fly with your own ideas. You could also play with sounds as you write. I played a lot with sounds. The family passes mast, the street splash of sunlight, the sky fills with all the spaces blue, or like, so, you know, just let the words sort of rub together. You could try a poem that uses specific place and time markers, moving back and forth in time, moving back and forth in place, or just stay in one place in time, but really find the specifics that make that place real. You can explore competing emotions. You can lean into tensions and tenderness. You can ask questions in your poem, like Anya Limon did. Am I as brave as those birds? You know, did I ever tell you this? Or you can write a poem about you and the natural world, using trees and animals biology, and that tension between the human imprint and the natural world. So, or you can do anything you darn well, please. If there's something else that is inspiring you, just go there. But take like 10 minutes now, and maybe you'll play with long lines. Maybe you'll be shorter lines, but just, and don't think too hard. Just grab one of these and go. Okay.
I will put the prompts in the chat. Oh, and thanks to, I'm just getting to the chat now. I can see. Thank you so much.
Yes, and I don't know why it said Maryland. When I typed Mary Lynn, I did it, but it changed to Maryland.
That Beauty and Disaster is a nod to Elizabeth Bishop. So I was evoking my poetic ancestors of Elizabeth Bishop and the women writers that taught me, and Virginia.
And the rooms that I was talking about are Virginia Woolf's room of my own, so yeah, Desiree, you picked up on that. Yep. We were channeling all kinds of poets in there. Yep. Okay.
All right, so 7:40. Yep.
So friends, take 10 minutes or so and write, and then Jill, I love that tail of that cat. And just write, and just, trust your instincts, and that you don't have to share, it's just for you, or you can at the end. So take 10 minutes and write something.
Friends, we'll take about 2 more minutes. Beat you to it. Okay.
So now we would love anybody who wants to share anything they want to. So it could be a line, it could be a whole poem. If you got some kind of a draft that's interesting you, it could be just a kind of, I've never done this before. I took a line from a poem and I, loved where it took me. So it can be either sharing the actual word you wrote or some part of the experience. This is where you get to lean into discomfort.
Reading your poems aloud is truly uncomfortable.
That's why you don't have, that's why you can take pieces, something
Right.
that you feel comfortable with, that you like, that's just working.
I'm gonna read my poem.
Thank you, Jillian.
This
Yay.
is a poem letter for Saria Rosenhaj,
Oh,
who I had a phone call with today. Okay. Sometimes it feels like a game on the schoolyard blacktop. Who can stay in the longest? I am still in. So are my parents, and so are yours. I am sorry you just got tagged, got out, got COVID. We all played it so safe, but the game is rigged so no one can win. I am on edge in the grocery store. Even with masks, I hold my breath as I walk past the man reaching for pasta sauce jars. There was only one type of Pillsbury cinnamon roll left. I wanted the jumbo with cream cheese frosting. Even with the new protections, vaccines, and boosters, I am uneasy. I think of the story you told me on the phone today. Reem sees how growing kids playing are afraid of hugging their friends, of meeting other grades. This is the only game they know.
Thank you, Jillian.
Yeah, thank you.
Are you gonna send that to Sarah?
Yeah.
Good idea. I think she'd love it.
Mhm.
Anybody else? Lines? Whole drafts?
I can go. I don't know if we're allowed to comment, but that was such a powerful opening with the game. So I just want to say that was so powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I'm gonna read a part of mine. Letters used to be the way of communication. How many weeks or months did it take to reach then? How many weeks or months would it take to reach you? If we still waited for letters like before. Now it is judged as to how it takes someone to respond to a text. Maybe there's something in the waiting, in the growing, in the passage of time, the eagerness to hear from one another.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I do still have two friends and we write letters to each other. And it feels funny, given the quickness of text, and you're right, the quick response, it does feels, and I wait and I think, did he get it? Did he get it? Will he send me poems? Will he, yeah, there is something in that anticipation, that space between. Mhm. Anybody else? Even if you don't want to talk, there you go. You see it in the chat there, Des? You're getting a shout out. Even if you don't want to read what you wrote, could you share what you tried or what sort of inspired you and how that worked out?
I'll read a little bit that I wrote. I was taken with the image of the cardinals, and it led me to write something longer about watching the birds on the feeder. But I'll just read the end. I think that's probably the part I like the best. If I open the door now, I will scatter them. Can I call them back with a scooped refill? Is it better to let them scrap for the last seeds, or offer them more, but they are without, launched upward by my interference?
Mm-hmm. I wrote about the birds too. I responded to the line, am I braver than those birds? That was such a big question for me in that poem. Because I love birds. People who've been in my classroom will also know that I love birds. I have birds hanging everywhere in my room. But I watch them plummet, from high branches and just swoop, and it gives me a little bit of vertigo, but I would love to do it. So my answer was no. I'm not braver than those birds. It ends with, I'd be a sparrow in a hedge, almost still, and the fox passing and the sun plummeting and my small heart dash. So, yeah. Well, we have 3 minutes left. So
Yep.
any other comments or questions or just epiphanies or going back to the other poems, anything at all? Here's your chance.
I can read what I have.
Thank you.
This is called A Letter to My Daughter.
Mm.
Your passport came yesterday. I remember mine. It gained me entry into the same ancient world which you are about to explore. I carried mine with pride. You will do so with apology. Will you be welcomed as I was? Will you feel connection, or is it lost from our world? I know you feel alone. I know you feel abandoned. Will this passport lead you to discover the beauty of the world stolen from you too young?
Mm.
Very, very powerful.
Very, yes. Thank you. Thank you.
And there you have it. That's what poetry does, right? It taps us into our fears, our loves, all of it. That's what happens, Rachel. You start with a single little sentence, and the next thing you know, you're deep in it.
Well, thanks everybody.
Yes, this was fun for us.
Yeah.
We hope you had some fun too, and we hope you'll play with your drafts and, send them out to Lisa. One of the resources at the end is AFS Connects. Is that what it's called? Connects, and you can, share anything on there too if you're feeling particularly brave and pleased with what you've written.
Yes, I was going to.
Oh yeah, do you want to show that last page? Can you just show that last slide just to show
Yep.
people what's on it?
Yeah,
Okay.
let me just
Thank
get
you.
there. And feel free to keep writing, always be writing poetry. It really is a balm.
Mhm. So, all right,
So,
can you?
yeah, go ahead. This should be your slide. Yes,
There
here
you
we
go. Okay, good. So, those land acknowledgement extra pieces, if you're interested in reading more about the Lenni Lenape and that woman who was sort of taken by and lived with the Quakers and was really torn between loving the new life in terms of music. She became a composer, but also, the lost language and the lost all that. It's a beautiful, it's a short article, just a page, and then some other ones. And so that's on Padlet.com, but there's the link. And then, there's the AFS Connect link for anybody who wants to add anything. So thank you so much for being with us.
Lisa, I'm going to stop sharing. And do you have anything you need us to do, or before we all say
I'm going
goodbye?
to talk about sending out your survey eventually. And
Yeah. So, so just another quick plug for AFS Connect. That is our alumni network that you can connect easily with each other and share poems. We'd love to have content up on that platform. So I encourage you all to join. And then we are going to follow up to this lifelong learning session with a survey. So it will be quick and easy. We'd love to hear your feedback for the poetry one. And if you were able to attend any of the others, feel free to share your feedback about those as well. So we hope to do this again. This is the last one of this session and probably of this year, but we hope to do it again next year. So if you have any suggestions for other content, we are open to ideas. So thanks for joining us tonight.
thanks all. Good night. And Jillian,
Thanks all.
please give Saria my love.
I will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lillian, I hope we can see each other soon.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be in touch.
Good
Bye
night,
now.
everyone.
Bye, Desiree. Thanks, everybody.
Tell your mom and dad I
Thank
said hi.
you.
Okay. Please
I
tell them.
will.
Think
So
of
great
them.
seeing you both.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, yeah.
Send me some poems you write now.
Okay, will do.
Good
Bye.
night. Good night.
Good
I
night.
want to hear more about the boyfriend too. Anyway.
Oh, hold on. Stop.